building burned down. Could I have the lights on again? I would like to read you the passage. I'm sorry I told you bother you. I'd like to read you one passage that relates to the attitude of the people of New Paltz toward Father Divine. Now it happened that the Divine movement had two properties in New Paltz, one on one side of town, one on the other. The Divine movement decided that they wanted to establish a children's home in Ulster County, and New Paltz was afraid that it was going to be located in New Paltz, and they were very much against it. So the New Paltz Chamber of Commerce asked a certain lawyer by the name of Hart to write a letter to the state requesting that permission not be given to establish a children's home in Ulster County. And I'd like to read just a little bit of his letter to you. I do ask you to think, this is not just the opinion of Mr. Hart. It is not just the opinion even of the Chamber of Commerce. It is, I believe, the opinion of a large proportion of the population of Ulster County at this time. Since 1678, the Wallkill River Valley has been inhabited and developed by our ancestors. By inheritance, possession, industry, and thrift, we have a prior right upon the social, educational, and welfare units of this community. Most of the social and religious doctrines of that element known as the followers of Father Divine are diametrically opposite, obnoxious, and repugnant to our principles. We cannot mix, but one must eventually exclude the other. The migration and transportation of a disproportionately large number of people into our midst without visible means of support, enchanted and hypnotized by a mortal who is financed in an unknown and mysterious manner, sustained by the most part with ignorant people of low intelligence, is shocking and obnoxious to our social order. He and his kind were not invited and are not wanted in our community. In the name of peace, we request them to depart. Pretty rough stuff. And it was strong enough to prevent the state from giving a license to Father Divine's community. So, in fact, a children's home was never established in Ulster County by the Divine movement. Thank you. The previous picture was a picture of the Divine House at Elting Corners, just to the east of New Paltz. And this is a further picture of it the way it's looked just recently. That house was burned down about 7 months or so after the Divine community bought it. It was burned down and suspected to be burned as a result of arson. Nevertheless, when it was burned down, although it was never rebuilt, the barn, which you see in the background on the right-hand side, was occupied by the followers of Father Divine. And one of the persons who occupied it for a number of years, he was a teacher. He later built the house that you see on the left, the red brick house, the modern house on the left. And recently, his daughter lived there, a white woman. His daughter lived there, and she was one of my best sources of information in writing this book. She grew up in the New Paltz Divine community. She continued her father was part of the movement, her mother was part of the movement. She continued her association with it, even though she was critical of it, questioned it a lot, and was not fully a follower, perhaps you would say. Still, she lived there until just a few months ago when the Lowe's improvement store on Route 299 outside of New Paltz, when it bought up her property. You see that the construction work that you see going on here is for building the Lowe's improvement store on the right-hand side. She bought up her property, and she has moved, of all places, to Philadelphia, which is the headquarters of the Divine movement today. This is Greenkill Park, which was a well-known resort in the early 1900s. This postcard is before the Divine Movement bought it. It shows an inn with a green roof on the right-hand side, the largest building on the right-hand side. But all the buildings that you see here are all part of the Greenkill Resort. It is located on Rosendale Creek, close to Eddyville. This is not far from Kingston. The boundaries of this resort actually were mostly in the town of Ulster, but partly in the town of Rosendale, very slightly in the town of Rosendale. And one of the first things that happens within a few months after the Father Divine Movement bought this property with its golf courses, tennis courts, swimming ponds, all that, was that the main building burned down again, believed to be a result of arson.
Which side of the Rondette is it on?
Can't hear you.
Which side of the Rondette is it on?
Creek Box Road.
On the Kingston side.
If you're
No,
going
that
down,
would be
if you're going down the creek,
left or right if you're
on the left, against the mountain.
And this is the main inn a couple of days after it had burned down, apparently by arson. We're moving now to Milton in the southern part of our county on the Hudson River. This building overlooks the Hudson River. This particular site was originally an artist colony. And during the Depression, the artists were unable to pay their way, and so they had to sell it, and they sold it to the Father Divine Movement. The lower part of the building was originally part of the original building. The upper part, the extra story that you see on top, was added by the Divine Movement for an enormous restaurant, a public restaurant at the top, one of their most common activities. This is right in front of that same building, the view towards the Hudson River. The man at the left is a white man from Philadelphia, and the man at the right is a black man from Philadelphia. These two men both came up to visit me when they knew I was writing about Father Divine Movement, and they wanted me to show them around whatever I could show them about the sites in Ulster County, which I did. They stayed in my house, and I took them all around, and this is part of why I happened to be able to take this photograph. The man at the left had been to Ulster County before, when there were a good many divine sites up here. As a young man, he'd been around here quite a lot, and visited a lot of these sites. The man at the right had never been up here before at all. This artist community in Milton had not only a main building, such as we already saw in the previous picture, but also scattered houses all around that various artists occupied for their activity. And this house straight in front of the middle was one of those houses, still occupied by an artist today. The man at the left is one of the owners of this site now. The man at the right is the same person from Philadelphia who was visiting me. We're now looking at a site in Saugerties. There were a good many different sites that the Divine Movement had in the town of Saugerties. Not in the village itself, but in the town. And this happens to be Hope Farm, which is located in West Saugerties. A large farm is connected with it. But there was originally a farmhouse, which you can see a bit of in the back of the picture to the right. But the Divinites added an enormous addition to that old farmhouse in order to house as many as 60 people on this farm.